Hello everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome to my channel. Those of you who are brand new, welcome. Those of you who are coming back, glad to see you again. Glad to see you come back. Those of you who have never been here before, my name is Kat Bowser. I am a licensed therapist, but I am also an author working on my first novel. So in my channel, I like to talk about all things writing, from what I consider the heart of writing, which is the characters, and what I consider the heart of characters is their psychology, because once a therapist, always a therapist. So for today, I wanted to talk about a topic that I've been considering for a while, and that is strictly atmosphere and how to set it. So what is atmosphere in regards to writing? In my mind, atmosphere is the mood that you get strictly from a place in writing. This can be a good mood or it can be a not so good mood. And I've seen a mix of several. So let me just show you guys a few of them right now. So what kind of mood do you get from that? What about this one? See the difference? There is definitely a shift in the emotions that we feel as readers when we set up a specific atmosphere for a story or for a section of a story. I have also heard this referred to as this is when a place becomes a character. And I can agree with that, because if you have a specific location that you use a lot or is very important when you do use it, it can take on a life of its own. And I think it's foolhardy not to take advantage of that. So what are things to consider when you're trying to set atmosphere in your story? I think overall there's three things that I consider. First off, what is the primary color that we're seeing in this atmosphere or in this location? And you might not think that's important, but it's actually very, very important. We have very different psychological responses to different colors. Colors like red, orange, yellow, these are considered what we call high energy colors, especially yellow. Red is considered, honestly, it's usually considered the color of anger, but it can also be considered a color of passion. So something that is very important, very vital for a character. You could use red a lot. Orange is kind of the in-between, so it's something that you're passionate about, and you're energetic about, but you're not necessarily, this isn't a life-threatening event. And then you have what we call the cooler colors, which is green, blue, and purple. Green in particular is usually seen as kind of a neutral mood setter. Blue is usually used to calm people down. Purple's like the odd one out because it can do a bunch of different things, especially depending on what shade you use. I've seen it used as almost a meditation type of shade, especially if it's more of an indigo kind of shade. So these are things that you can use when you're setting up a scene or a location. Like, for example, if you were to look at, I forgot about white and black. I'm sorry. How could I forget those colors? White, for the most part, is regarded as a quote-unquote good color. It's usually associated with purity, with innocence, with good, which is why a lot of times in media and in stories you see the good characters wearing white. And the bad characters, what do they wear? They wear black. Because black is generally considered to be the opposite of white. Whether or not that's true is it's a completely other conversation for another day. But black is generally thought to be very isolating because it blocks out all other colors. So that being said, what do the bad guys wear usually? Black. So how can you use this when you're setting up a scene? Well, you can take into account where is your character and what colors can you make more prevalent there? And is this a color that you will shift depending on the situation? One color that you will see used a lot, especially if you were like me and you grew up with Disney movies, green and purple and black. What are those associated with in Disney movies? The villain. Almost to a disturbing degree. If you see green or purple in a Disney movie, it probably means the villain's showing up. And Disney has used that as a motif. As you know, whenever we see these colors, we get prepared for, okay, the villain's showing up, something bad's going to happen. It gets us emotionally prepared. So in your story, you can do one of two things. You can create a motif of your own, and it doesn't have to be with the usual colors like black or green or whatnot. You can definitely use other colors, but just bear in mind the color you choose, it still creates an emotional response. So if you're going to have your villain show up and you're going to make yellow their motif, good luck. I honestly really hope you're able to do that because I think that would be very interesting. But I think it will also be very hard to do because yellow, as a general rule, is associated with something cheery and happy and non-threatening. And usually with a villain, you want something to be a little threatening. Now, if you want to make it a motif for your hero, I think that could work very, very well, especially if you are doing YA or similar and you have a younger hero, because yellow and white, very much young, energetic, full of opportunity, that kind of thing. So can you shift the colors? Absolutely. That's why I like to think about the time of day and the season that's going on when we're setting up these scenes. For instance, what's something else you usually see during a final climax? Rain. This is something that is used a lot when you set up a final battle. Again, if you look at Disney movies or even old fairy tales in general, rain shows up a lot, especially in a final battle, and even in action movies nowadays, you see rain show up a lot. And I actually will go into why that is in, I think, my third point, but for right now, let's just say that is another motif that definitely shows up. So what can you do to shift the colors? Well, definitely time of day. Things look different in the day as opposed to the night. They look different in spring as opposed to winter. So one thing I like to do sometimes is I like to readdress an area that I introduced way at the beginning of the story, but introduce it in a different kind of weather or different kind of time of day so that it has a completely different feel. Like, for example, a set of woods that I introduced at the beginning of one of my works in progress. I introduced it as this deep wide wood, but it's full of animals, and it's bright, it's got flowers, it's cheery. Later on, I reintroduce it, and it's night. It's slipped into winter, so all the leaves have died. They've all dropped off. So now instead of these full trees, you have these skeleton-like looking trees, and that creates a completely different feel. Okay, so part 2 of what I would take into account when I'm considering setup atmosphere is kind of what I touched on a little bit last point, is the environment. Where is your character? Because you want to take into account what is around them and what kind of mood are you trying to set. If you're trying to set a happy mood, for instance, you might surround them by people they care about. You might give them an open area. You might have various different origins for those colors we talked about. But if you're talking about you want to set a suspenseful, scary scene, that is entirely different. I know I showed a clip of it to you guys earlier, and I'm really hoping that doesn't get my video taken down, but you never know nowadays. Of the original Sleeping Beauty, where Aurora is put under her spell and led towards the spinning wheel. That whole situation is very suspenseful and creepy, not just of the color, but because of the design. If you look at the designs throughout the rest of the movie, especially at the beginning, before all these threats happen, it's very watercolory, it's very smooth. They don't have a lot of narrow corridors, but in this situation, that's exactly what they have. It's very narrow, it's very rigid. It's a huge contrast to what is outside of this atmosphere. If you want to take another example, the atmosphere of the Shire in the Lord of the Rings movies, aside from the awesome music, which definitely helps, you have a combination of all these different colors. You have these paths, but they're wide open. There's people that are coming and going as they please. It's very, lack of a better word, it's flowy. You can kind of shift in and out. There's not a lot of constriction or restriction or anything like that. And that sets a mood. But if you go into, say, the Battle of Helm's Deep, that is a completely different scenario. There are definite lines. There is a rigidness to how the lines are set up because it's a battle. The color is gone. It's all very blue and black and dark. So there's those colors again. But the third point, and I really think this is the most important point because it relates to the other 2 points, is taking into account your character's personality. Because each character is different. I'll give you guys an example. One of my characters, Zava. He is an outgoing fella. He's very friendly, but he only has select people that he really trusts. So, he'll mingle with other people, but if it's a serious situation, there's only about 3 or 4 people he actually trusts. And he's used to living in an area where he can swim in the lake, where he has ways that he can get to his family, ways that he can get away from danger. So if I want to make him uncomfortable, and I want to make the audience feel uncomfortable with him, I put him in a big city where there is a lot of people. He doesn't know his way around. There's no real escape for him, and it's all very condensed, like New York City. It's very sardine-ish. And because that contrasts with his ability to escape and free move and things like that, it makes him uncomfortable. And if I can make him uncomfortable, I can make my reader uncomfortable. But you can also do the opposite, depending on, again, what your character is comfortable with. One of my other characters, who am I going to use? Let's see here. I'll use Nolly. Nolly has the opposite problem. He doesn't have a lot of people that he trusts, but he usually gets danger from things like his mother, for instance. She is not a nice person, and she's not kind to him. So he actually feels safer when he's with a bunch of people because his mother won't act out her anger when there's a lot of people around. So for him, if I want to make him feel safe, I'm going to put him with a bunch of people, and I'm going to talk about how many people are around, how many people are shifting in and out. And that's going to be a complete contrast to when he's alone with his mother. So, kind of like anything, you got to take into account what makes your character feel safe and what doesn't make them feel safe. Because that really, honestly, is what a mood boils down to. Those are the two main moods. Is my character safe or is he not safe? And then, obviously, within those moods, there's other ones. Okay, he's safe, and I want him to feel enthusiastic and happy, or he's safe, and I want him to feel calm. And there's categories within them, but the two main ones and the two major points you need to determine right off the bat are, is my character safe or is he not safe? And like I said, this is where I'm going to talk about the rain a little bit. I mentioned rain as a motif that's used a lot. And it's used a lot in final battles for, I think, a couple of reasons. One, it lets them use the color motif that we already talked about. But two, rain as a general rule means instability. It means unsafe. Because if you look at it, most of these battles are taking place outside. I think one or two might take place inside a building. But as a general rule, they're outside. And when it's raining hard, your vision is blurred. You can't see as well. If there's thunder and lightning going on, you can't really hear as well. And if you're battling like so many final battles like to do, somewhere precarious up high, water makes your traction nil. You are very likely to slip and fall and all kinds of other lovely things. So rain adds a factor of danger. So that's something that you can think about too, depending on what kind of mood you're trying to set. Am I trying to set a mood of danger? Am I trying to set a mood of being secure, or the opposite? And then, of course, there's the mood of mystery, which you can kind of use in multiple areas, I think. And I think the thing to keep in mind here is what makes a mystery is the unknown. I don't think it's so much the creepiness of it, which, don't get me wrong, I love a creepy wandering through a castle trying to find clues kind of thing. But it's the unknown that really gets to us. Because if you think about it, if you take, for example, someone who knows a place inside and out, and you show them a dark, unlit hallway and say, okay, at the end of this hallway, I need to go find something. If they grew up there, they're probably going to be okay with it for the most part because they know what's down there. If you take someone that's never been down there, they have no clue what they're going to find. It takes on a completely different meaning. So that is my digging into setting atmosphere within your story. I hope you guys got some things that got you to think about it. I'd love to hear any comments and suggestions you have. As always, leave them below, or you can always follow me on social media. If you like these kind of videos, please feel free to subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next time.